The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of paid sponsors. Episode 156 of the Drive-By Podcast is sponsored by Les Délices Lafrenière, 5 great Montreal locations, including the original in St. Leonard, Rosemere, Montreal West, Pointe Claire, and my home location on Taschereau Boulevard in Brossard with the newly expanded store. Go check them out. The most amazing cakes and pastries, voted Montreal's top bakery year after year, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again in 2024. Wishing you all a very happy new year from Les Délices Lafrenière.
This is the Drive-By with Freeway Frank.
Viva is back.
Freeway.
Viva Las Florida.
I was saying, if I look like crap, it's because I feel like crap. I'm now on like day 4 of a sinus infection recovery. I got back to Montreal. What day are we now? Tuesday. A week and a half ago. I had 3 days of like healthy fun. Went for a polar plunge with my wife on a Tuesday.
Yep.
I was coming down with something right before I did that, and I said, this will jumpstart my immune system.
Yeah.
It jumpstarted it into a nosedive, and then that's it. Spent the last 4 days sobbing like a baby with a sinus infection.
Yeah, I think everybody, first of all, great to see you.
The same.
Third appearance on the Drive-By Podcast. You never forget me. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
The timing is perfect because I'm heading back. Not that I'm excited to do it.
Yeah,
heading back to sunny Florida tomorrow.
Exactly. I wish I could come with you, man. It's look, Quebec is very unique. Let's get back for a second there. You were saying about your wife and plunging into the lake wherever you were up north celebrating. Everybody's been sick this holiday season. Everyone I've run into, literally, including myself for a couple of days, hit my wife harder. You've been sick. In Florida, I mean, I would imagine it's a different kind of sick.
Well, that's the thing. And it's not to say we didn't get here and got sick. My kids had a bit of a cold when we left. Everybody knew
exactly.
it. Yeah. And so it does seem, and I don't know, I'm no mathematician scientist here, but you get sick in Florida. It feels better because you can still go outside and get sunlight when the weather's decent.
Yeah.
It's been cold and dreary in Florida as well. But
some vitamin D.
Vitamin D. So I've had a cold or been sick once or twice since I've been to Florida. It seems like it goes by quicker. Here, holy crap. I got it. It was the worst. I get congested. It turns into a sinus infection, and you can't go outside because it's cold and dreary. I haven't seen the sunlight in 9 days since I've been here.
No, it hasn't.
Crazy.
It's not. The thing about Montreal winters, usually we have lots of snow. It's cold. We've had barely any snow. I think the only real storm we had was at the beginning of December. So there's literally no snow on the ground. It feels weird, but it's dreary, it's cloudy, like you said, and it is cold.
It's blue. It's literally, the outdoor color is blue. I mean, you figure it snows, it's going to be overcast, fine, but you have that beautiful white, everything looks clean and bright.
Yes.
It's just been cloudy, dreary, cold, no snow, and literally blue. And I walked down here from my parents' place. You walk through downtown, especially with the no snow, the streets are dirty. It's January 2nd, so the streets are dead quiet. It really feels like you're sort of in a dystopian novel of the future. But that end, being sick, being tired, it doesn't make for the best perspective. But it's been good nonetheless to come back and see friends and family and one more appearance.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never forget your roots in Quebec. You've been back since moving to Florida. You've been back 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times. What I like, I wish I was recording your entrance here to the podcast studios. What I like is when you were coming in, so you were at the gate. We literally have gates here outside, okay? So as the gates are opening up, I press the remote button to open the gates, and the gates are opening up, and here comes this man, Viva Frei, with his amazing hair, looks like Jesus, walking into the Own Space podcast studios here at the Drive-By, and I'm literally in my head, this is the first thing I think, he's walking literally through the gates of hell. It's like, you know what I mean?
Well, just to add to the description, I'm wearing an orange toque that I found at my parents' place. I've got my sunglasses on because the natural light is making my sinuses feel like they're going to explode. I just came from the pharmacy to get some Sinutab, and I'm like, just get me inside to the warmth. It's easy to make fun of the weather, or at least complain about it.
Yep.
I do understand how people get to a certain age and they say, I'm not putting up with this anymore. I'm going to go to a warm climate.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I was looking at old people on the street. I'm like, if you had a choice, it's a beautiful city. Architecturally, politically, I'm sure we're going to get into it. It's falling through the... Not falling through the... It's going down the drain politically. But if you had a choice, weather-wise, no one would choose to live in this dreary
Never.
6 months of the year.
No.
And it's moderately miserable. I've gotten soft. Florida has made me soft in terms of environment, but hard in terms of other. Well, that sounds gross, but rugged in terms of other things.
You ever think about? Is there any part of you that ever thinks about? I mean, you went over to Florida. You have your Rumble deal in Florida. Your wife is doing her career there.
Well, she's actually we have a specific visa where she's not allowed working.
Oh, she's not allowed.
She's not allowed working. So she's not technically working. Period. No.
Okay.
I mean, there's no under the. She's not working. She has projects.
That's what I mean.
But no,
she's a neuroscientist.
She's a neuroscientist.
Yeah.
So she's continuing to work on her own projects. But no, there's no. For now, it's a 3-year temporary visa where only I can work under the visa. We're trying to figure out a longer term plan because you can do the 3-year renewable thing, but
is that an E1 or E2?
TN1 for me.
TN1.
So under NAFTA they have they have certain visas which are specific to certain types of training, and mine being legal training, my agreement with Rumble, and so the only inconvenience is that kids can't work under it, wife can't work under it, and so we're also planning long term because the plan is.
Never to come here again.
I don't want to say never. I'll come back to visit. Whatever.
Yeah.
I think the longer term plan is, all things considered. I didn't this up. What is the word? Upending or sort of uprooting your entire family to reestablish roots somewhere else. I mean, it's
not easy.
It's not easy, and you don't do it for 3 years to come back. And kids are in a different school now. They've all established new connections, new roots in Florida. Above and beyond that, politically, socially, financially, economically, opportunity wise. Montreal is not what Florida is.
No, absolutely not. And you know what? It hasn't been, and that's what people, let's say younger people are saying, Montreal's just not the same. Let's say people in their 40s, people in their 30s. I was like, okay, take it from a guy who's even older than you. It hasn't been Montreal as we remember it. It's been a long time now. We're talking decades and decades and decades, 80s, 70s.
I remember my father saying, once upon a time, Montreal used to be like the film hub
Mecca
of Canada.
Yeah.
It used to be the art hub of Canada. And then at some point, I don't know if it was the second referendum
or the first. Yeah, the first one was the starter.
Yes, that was 78, I believe.
So the first one was 19. I got to check that up.
The second one was definitely 96. 95, 96.
That was 95.
I remember that one because when everyone had the protest for the unity, I went to see 95. A movie called Powder at the Eaton Center.
Wasn't the first? Wasn't this 82? Wasn't that the?
I don't know. We'll see.
Let me check.
By my math, I think it was the late 70s.
I should know this. I studied Quebec
I think it was
history.
78, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The first one pushed out a lot of Anglos, drove them to Toronto. Toronto became sort of an economic, cultural hub, epicenter of Canada, for if you can believe that. But it's like they keep doing it now with what Legault is doing with the McGill or they're not McGill University per se, but universities in Quebec. They're doing it again.
Yes,
I can't say it's by accident. It's by design. But what year is it?
Yeah, they're finding different ways of doing things they did in the past.
I say that they're finding different creative ways of nationalizing things without nationalizing them.
Exactly.
So government can't take over McGill, Concordia, Bishops. What it can do, I'm not sure I fully understand the provincial authority, the provincial legislative authority to just unilaterally jack up university prices, but only on Anglo institutions. They're finding a way to indirectly nationalize and usurp institutions of value.
So Quebec's first referendum, 1980, and the second, 1995. I remember because I was a kid, and I remember asking my parents, were we on the we side or the no side?
Were you a kid for the first one?
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm pretty old, man. I remember those billboards on the balconies of the East End where I was growing up. Yeah, and I remember a girl that I was friends with, and a bunch of the kids in the neighborhood all had we signs, and as Italian immigrants, we had the no. And I was trying to figure out with my parents, why are we no? Why are they yes? My dad tried to explain that to me, and I had no idea what he was saying.
You got to be 55 years old.
No, younger.
Okay, so I was only going based on memory, not based on.
It's a good guess.
No, because I don't have memories before the age of 10, so I assume nobody else does.
I'm one of those guys when it comes to my age. I don't give away my age.
It doesn't matter. All that to say is you have a memory.
Very close.
Okay, so that's
cool. Of course I have a memory. That's why I remember it. I definitely remember that referendum, and that was the first of the mass exodus out of Quebec, right? And then before the second one happened, I got the hell out. I left in 1993. I went over to Vancouver and told myself I was never coming back. 18 years later, I came back for a gig here in Montreal to do the morning show. But I was gone. And when the referendum was happening and I was living in Vancouver, I was like, good move.
So you have a memory of people putting... I remember the We Know in 95. So like the idea of like the Ukrainian flags hanging on people's front houses to, I don't know, publicly display political ideology. We had this mutatis mutandis back in the 80s.
Yes.
People were putting We Know on their doors and you knew which neighbors stood with which.
Yes.
It's interesting. For everybody thinks that what we're going through now is somehow unique in our time, and virtue signaling, public displays of political ideology have always existed in one form or another.
Yeah, it has always existed. The only difference today is social media. And, it's like, I was having this discussion with somebody recently and said, these crazy people have always existed. They've always been, I know you can't see the word crazy nowadays. I do. And I say it because it's true. These people, the unstable, okay?
That's even worse than saying crazy. Just call them crazy.
I'm not going to attribute it to
what's amazing
the mentally unhinged.
You can't call them crazy, but I call them mentally unhinged, unstable, deranged. But don't call them crazy because that's politically incorrect.
Exactly. But these people always existed. Now we know where they are because of social media, right? Everybody has a forum, a platform to talk about what they want to talk about, to give their opinion. Before, we didn't have that. So unless you heard the person on your street making an opinion about the Quebec referendum, you have the blue we sign, he has the orange no sign, you wouldn't know. And neighbors back then and people back then, they really didn't. It didn't feel to me like people were talking about that stuff, at least not in the public. I remember growing up, my parents always said, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion. Yep. And I'd say, why? I just don't, right? And then now, that's all people talk about, right? Everybody's a scientist. Everybody knows exactly what's going on with the latest...
It's amazing. My dad always said, you never talk politics or religion at parties.
Yeah.
And I remember, it's a later memory, but talked politics at a McGill party, philosophy. We were talking about abortion with a couple of women, and it didn't end well. I was like, now I see why you don't talk religion or politics at parties. Yeah. But it's true. Now it's an unavoidable issue. But back in the day, it is interesting. There were always the loud vocal people, a vocal minority. Before the advent of social media, it does seem that the views of the vocal minority did not get amplified to the point where it looked like the voice of the majority.
Yeah, that's exactly
You'd have your letters to the editor. People would always express themselves.
Yes.
You'd have pamphlets and people going door or stopping you on the street. You want to sign a petition. Now it's an algorithm. It does feel not an algorithmically, but it does feel like an inorganically amplified minority that actually never existed in any greater number than they do now, but they carry undue influence because they seem to convince the majority that they don't represent just a minority, but a majority.
Yeah. And then it's the media too, and having worked in media for, 30 years, minus 2 months. I was almost there, Viva.
30, how old are you?
How old are you again? No, I did. I worked 3 decades in the media, but having worked in the media, I know, having experienced what they're all about, and now seeing, going back and seeing where it started in my career and how they were, it seemed like things were more balanced back when I started, back in the days of, when journalism was actually present. Now it doesn't seem to be around anymore. Now it's...
Or the issue is that it was always imbalanced, but the imbalance was not amplified basically by digital steroids.
Absolutely.
Because you look back, they've been lying. I say the media has been biased to some extent, or at least politicized to some extent, forever.
Yeah,
whether it's the Vietnam War, that's I don't know how long. That's 40 plus years ago now. World War II. They've always been politically biased to one way, to one extreme or the next. It just hasn't been amplified to the degree to which it's been amplified over the last 10 years, or revealed to the degree that it's been revealed over the last, say, 5 years.
Yeah.
But it's I'd love to know what the industry was like 30 years ago, where you're on radio, where it's sort of like, this is the status quo. We are what we are, but we don't have overt political agendas.
No. And I always felt like early on in the business that I wasn't really spoken to, in the sense of, don't touch this, don't talk about this, don't bring this up. If you did cross a line, they'd slap you. I'll
be curious to know what those lines were back in the day. Like, were they specific issue stories, or was it political affiliated? Say not narratives, but were they singular issues? Like, don't talk about this story just because it's not popular, not cool, or it'll get us in trouble, or don't talk about issues at large.
Yeah, probably. No, and they never told us that. And I think it's because when I started in radio, especially in my domain and what I know with the radio broadcasting, it was mom and pop, independents who owned these companies, right? Or business people that were branching into radio or were career radio people. It wasn't corporations. So once the corporations took over, that's when everything changed. That's when I started to notice when the big corporations started buying up radio and television. That's when the agenda arrived. And that's and literally in front of me. And don't mention Trump. Yeah, Frank, don't talk about that. Yeah, that's not a good idea. That's when I started to notice.
One of the memes on the internet, as we say, it goes like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, there were X amount of like multiple dozens of independent media companies. And in whatever, 2020, there's 5. So everything that we know is owned by 5 corporations, maybe even fewer.
Yeah.
You lived through that transition.
Yes.
And so it became overt. Where at some point it starts off as a bottom line. We own this now. It's sort of more of a business than a mom and pops thing. Stuff is good for the bottom line. Stuff is bad for the bottom line. Then it becomes infiltrated by politics and ideology.
Absolutely. And then you started. That's when I started to notice things like, back in the day, and I was in BC. They would have the conservative, MP on CKNW talk radio talking about whatever the issue was, with the NDP rep or whoever the NDP premier was at the time. They would be there debating. And now, if you listen to a radio station like CJD, because I'm here in Montreal locally, which I never do, by the way, but I put on recently.
They are awful, evil people.
It's garbage. It's
beyond garbage. Yeah. At least serves a purpose. It's destructive. I've never heard more toxic crap in my life.
It's vile. You listen to it. I can't believe what I'm listening to, and it's all one-sided. And it's sometimes it makes me. I had to turn it off recently when I put it on because I couldn't believe. I turned it on and it felt like it was, no joke, December 2020. Or December 2021.
I thought you were going to say December 1940 because when I listened to some of that crap,
first of all, you know what I mean. Like I was going through like, what am I listening to here? If I didn't turn this crap on, you wouldn't even know this was going on.
No, and it's got a wavelength. It's got a platform where it leads you to believe that other people like it, agree with it, or support it. Yeah. But they've captured their media or they've captured their platform. I don't think they represent anybody except for their own selfish selves. And who are there? There's Elias Makos, who's on there. He blocked me on Twitter. There's another one who blocked me on Twitter because I kept on calling in the show to try to call them out a little bit by calling in and then call them out on social media. The most toxic stuff ever, like, at the time, unvaccinated, don't let them in your houses, all these things. At one time...
I heard some of the worst stuff coming from that radio station. I couldn't believe it because it's former colleagues of mine and people that I respected.
Awful, well, I'll just say, so you don't have to, awful people, awful platform. It should be off the air. When Justin Trudeau had gravel thrown at him during the 2021 election, and they're like, "This is criminal. It's terrible." And then they refer to the guy who smashed an egg on Maxime Bernier's head as the gentleman who smashed an egg on Maxime Bernier's head. Oh, Maxime never felt at risk. He never felt endangered. So that's fine. But someone throws a few pebbles at Justin Trudeau. It's the end of the world. It's right-wing American politics making its way into Canada.
MAGA.
These are the people that they build a narrative as opposed to report on one, and just terrible. I could go on for an hour about
no, me too.
Being toxic.
And so okay, I was watching your channel last night, and thanks for the shout out. I think you mentioned
yeah, absolutely. that was in my from the basement, right? There was a
yes, yeah, and I was watching it. It's funny because I wasn't falling asleep because of your content. I was tired because it's been a long week, and then you started dissecting New Year's Eve on CNN, which I thought, by the way, if anyone has... Okay, first of all, I don't think I'm not encouraging anybody to go back and watch New Year's Eve on CNN.
They can watch it on my live stream.
Watch Viva dissect the... I think it was like 20, 25 minutes. I thought was brilliant. And everything you mention and everything that you bring up about New Year's Eve on CNN is everything, in my opinion, that is wrong with the world right now. And it's that programming, predictive.
I call it persuasion.
Persuasion.
It's basically like it's persuading you to tolerate and expect what has not yet come but is coming, or they want you to accept when it comes.
They're molding you.
And for anybody who hasn't seen it, this is...
So I want to mention that because it blew me away, and everything that you picked up, it's funny because I wasn't watching it because I was working that night at an event. But when I was watching it with you, before you made the comments, I see, can I pick up what he's going to pick up? It's funny. I was picking up everything that you were.
It was mine. So first of all, it wasn't even like don't watch this crap. We have it on the
you have better things to do.
Yeah, we're up at the cottage. There's like 28 people running around. The TV is background noise, and also just to let us know when New Year's Eve is coming because not everybody's paying attention. It didn't just air on CNN. Like they broadcasted the image that I'm going to describe. It was on all of MSM, mainstream media. I don't like. There's one person controlling one camera, telling the world this is your new dystopian future. But bottom line, they start doing the countdown. I said the orb looks like the most unwelcoming. The crystal ball used to be beautiful Swarovski crystal. Now it looks like. It has satanic triangles in it. I'm not into any of that.
Me neither. But
I'm not into that. But when someone points out something that is undeniable once you see it, I can't help but observe it. I did an interview with Jacob Angeli, the QAnon shaman. He's the guy who spent a long time in jail, got arrested for January 6th, dressed up like the wolf hat. And we start talking about, this is just a little tangent, he starts talking about pedophilic symbols. And there's a mall in Arizona that he claims, has some issues maybe related to pedophilia in terms of won't get too far into that. Choking on my tongue here.
Water. Need more water.
No. He then says, look at the symbol for the shopping center, and then look at the symbol for pedophilia, like the triangle thing, and you tell me they're not identical, and they're identical. So this orb that has triangles on it looks like a satanic orb. Then they flash to a woman who's wearing a face mask outdoors, taking this off. It's like, okay, good. So we're going from this futuristic, was once a beautiful symbol of the New Year's, now looks very menacing to me. Yeah. A woman wearing a mask, 3, 2, 1, New Year's. Then you get...
The numbers were weird.
The numbers were weird. The numbers looked like numbers. It looked like KIA. I mean, there was a word. I think it was Kia was the sponsor, but couldn't even make out what the name was. Yeah. Just blue, sharp. Everything looks mean, cold, and angry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Joe Biden's freaking Crimson speech. You're not a crazy person for thinking, holy shit, this looks like a dictator trying to be a dictator. When he's screaming, frothing at the mouth, wearing a black suit in front of a crimson red backdrop, it looks menacing. This looks menacing. Then the ball drops, and the first thing you see, 2 guys. I think they're 2 guys. I mean,
it was 2 guys. It was 2 guys.
Yeah, I'm not saying this to be glib.
No.
One of them could have been a woman. You don't presume genders, but you see 2 guys eating each other's face. It's not like a kiss, Happy New Year's. It's like.
They were going at it.
Yeah. Then one guy puts his hand on the guy's jaw. And we're watching two grown adults basically have to the degree you can have sex without having sex in public. Yeah. That's what's going on. Yeah. Then they flash to another one. And people can notice a couple of things. One was a gay couple, a biracial gay couple. Next one's a biracial heterosexual couple. Which, that I didn't actually, my brain doesn't go there. But when someone points it out, it's like, oh, okay, fine. I can see you making that connection.
With the sponsor on the party hats. With the sponsors.
It was called Planet Fitness.
Yeah.
It was literally like the scene out of Idiocracy. Oh, sorry, my having. So just so everybody, I had a sinus infection. It still doesn't hurt to swallow, but it's still a forceful thing. What was it out of Idiocracy where they go Starbucks is giving hand jobs and welcome to Costco, I love you. It's like it's so overt, in your face degeneracy, sexualizing of everything. Like, this is your future, and then you look at the people making out. There's nobody else around them. Everybody else is looking in some other direction with their cameras, doing their selfies. It was so obviously staged and contrived.
It looked staged, yeah.
And that's it. And what's it being staged for? To see grown men, making love in the streets, get used to it. I made a joke. In 30 years, it's going to go from ball dropping to there'll be scenes of fellatio ringing in the new year. We're only off by a few decades, and it's going to go downhill fast.
Yeah, and as crazy as what you said may sound, it's not nutty at all, because if you watch it and you go back and you were dissecting the whole night,
and I stopped after 20 seconds. And we had kids in there. We're like, okay, turn this crap off. Happy New Year, kids.
If you watch it, and anybody with a half a brain, any parent, anybody for that matter, I'm not even a parent, I saw that and I was like, this is not what I would want to see, and it has nothing to do with 2 gay guys making out.
It could. I made the joke. It could have been. I'm picking my 2 favorites. Brad Pitt in his prime.
Yeah, it could have been
with Meg Ryan in her prime.
It doesn't matter.
Maybe I want to see them doing it, but not at a New Year's Eve party. If the reason for which you want to see 2 beautiful people, doing that sexually, maybe for other, sexual reasons, not for ringing in the New Year. So
it was weird. It was just
it was terrible, and that aired everywhere. And that's, I mean, to me, it's like basically saying this is your new future. Embrace it, normalize it, because it's going to get worse from here.
Look, it's a shame to me that more people are not picking up on this stuff. I think people are.
We almost forgot the most important thing.
What's the most
Couple that with the entire evening of degeneracy.
Shots.
Anderson Silva, not Anderson Silva.
Andy
I'm sorry,
Cohen.
So I didn't know who the other two were.
Well, I don't know. There was a woman that was drinking from a brown bag. I don't know. I have no idea. But I think the other guy is Andy Cohen, right?
I'm not sure. I don't know the name. I just know that the other two were equally degenerate.
His male co-host is Andy Cohen, if I'm not mistaken.
Andy Cohen was the guy. The two of them who he was trying to read his lines and apparently couldn't read his lines after 4 shots of tequila.
Yeah, it's the two guys that were... so Anderson Cooper doing the shot of tequila and the other guy. Okay. Every hour when you were showing that, every hour on the hour, leading up to midnight, right? They were taking a shot.
I wasn't watching it the entire time.
No, I know. You did the
afterwards.
But no, I thought that was... they were like two schoolgirls.
And then what did Anderson Cooper said? I read it. I didn't see it. My dad saw it in real time. I read it in New York Post. He's like... Give daddy his juice or something. Anderson Cooper said, it's so disgusting. It's so stupid. And like, who the hell, what kind of adult can't tolerate 4 shots of tequila? First of all, if you don't like the way it tastes, don't drink it. You make like this stupid juvenile game out of it where these are the adults somehow depicting that this is normal behavior to kids. Even kids who drink out, like, they don't do it like that. Yeah. They don't act like a bunch of buffoons.
Yeah. They look square doing it, and
it was over.
It was embarrassing.
Top.
Yeah. And not only that, if he's a credible journalist, which apparently he is, and first of all, if you watched people in the last 24 hours, I went to, anyone I know who's more liberal, which is so many people I know are liberal, and their view of what happened, they loved it. Right? They were like, "Oh, look at this! Look how amazing!" They don't get it. That it's pure debauchery and it almost looks evil in a way. Like all this is being set up to kind of manipulate your kids into thinking everything is...
I think they know it's evil. I think they feel that it's virtuous to say, "Oh, that's so nice. It's so liberating." And they're clenching their teeth and like, "Oh, just hopefully it's not my kids and hopefully it's someone else's kids." Yeah. It's the falseness and the phoniness of this... over tolerance. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, not to say intolerant, but like, okay, like call moral degeneracy what it is. And if people want to engage in it, do it and do it, privately. But to say like, oh, it's liberating to impose this degeneracy on everybody. I genuinely think the people who do that, it's like, okay, do it. I'll say it looks good and I'll say I'm tolerating it because it makes me feel good. Just, hopefully my kids don't do it. And if they do, well, okay, that's the price of my liberation as well.
But who in their right mind as a program director or, news director, TV program director, whoever it is that made that decision.
How about the confirmed pedophiles that work at these companies in the first place?
Probably.
Who was it? The one who ordered to kill the story on Epstein, or I think it was NBC or CBS. We can't fact check this in real time, but people will know. One of the producers who basically gave the orders or some of the orders not to cover Epstein was later charged with and convicted of pedophilia or child pornography on his computer. I forget the guy's name. It was NBC or CBS. But no, I mean, these people are all moral degenerates to begin with. And they think that, they're going to just impose their degeneracy on others, normalize it, then moralize it. And if you don't accept their degeneracy, you're the intolerant bigot.
Yeah. But to me, as somebody who was in media and having worked, nearly 3 decades in the business, why a news director or program director would think that your main anchor, this is their star, right? Anderson Cooper, why it would look good. I mean, take any anchor from when we were growing up, Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings. If you go back, many decades, Walter Cronkite, you go back through all these amazing journalists that had integrity, right? And would they be getting plastered on New Year's Eve?
Well, first of all,
in front of the cameras? It's just weird. The same way you wouldn't see them cry when announcing that JFK was just assassinated and murdered, even though they were keeping, their composure and coming on TV and telling the nation this. The same way they would do that back in the day and keep it professional. You would not see these people in the 80s or 90s drinking on New Year's Eve. And this is my legit newsman drinking and acting like a buffoon. Why CNN would think this is a good idea to me isn't...
Well, but also I thought they had issues with them and told them not to drink from prior years. And
They did.
Don Lemon also had some issues where he
Well, he
drinks and
can't
acts
work
like an
with
idiot.
Anderson on New Year's because apparently they both got drunk together, one in plastered, and looked like something might even happen between them.
Well, I mean, there's that. And what Don Lemon was accused of having done to that guy, something Heinz. You heard the story. He was sued for sexual assault, where he allegedly rubbed his hands between his groin and then stuffed them in the guy's face and said, "Do you like?" Apparently, after having had a few drinks.
Yeah.
I don't. The other thing is, are they 12 years old? Where 4 shots of tequila and 4? Let's just assume it's 4 1.5 ounce shots.
Yeah.
Okay, that's 6 ounces of alcohol over a few hours. Who can't act like a normal person while doing that?
Right.
I mean, it's an overall normalizing of degeneracy, where other people are going to say, well, okay, I misbehave in life, but at least I don't misbehave that badly. So here's the new standard of what's publicly acceptable, and therefore I can tolerate my own degeneracy at a private level, at a different level, because at least it doesn't reach that egregious over the top level. Or they just think that's what people need to see, or they think that's what they need to be now in order to capture the attention of a market that they know that they're losing, which I think is probably the most plausible explanation.
Yeah, absolutely. Or trying to change with the times, and like you said, going for a market they know they can get.
How many people were watching? I'd love to know what the viewership was.
I'll look that up
because it's so painfully terrible. I don't know who watches that. Young people who are out at clubs, I don't think they're watching that. Families who are at home, I don't think they're watching that. Who's watching that? Like the 1 million Joe Biden voters are watching this crap. And then what's the purpose of doing it? It was terrible. It was awful to watch, and hopefully no one did. But now if you didn't, you don't have to.
I'm putting it in here. See if I get it. Let's see. The ratings. The ratings they're not out yet.
I don't know how you measure ratings.
But I mean, look, who's watching CNN? When they were comparing Tucker Carlson's ratings at the time he was still on Fox with CNN at 8 o'clock in the evening, I think Tucker had in the millions, close to 3 million.
More than the next 3 combined.
Yeah,
I think
3 million, and I think whatever her name is, that
Rachel Maddow.
No, on CNN.
Errol Burnett. Carol Burnett. No, Errol.
Carol Burnett.
Out front with Burnett. Why do I know these?
Yeah. Aaron Burnett.
This is the power of programming.
Yeah.
Like, I know these names of people who I don't even want to know, but
it was something like not even 500,000. I think it was between 400,000 and 500,000 viewers on CNN in prime time against Tucker Carlson before he left. So think about that. This is a country of what is America now?
300 and say
approaching
60 million.
400 million.
Yeah, I mean, with the what is it now? 300,000 illegals crossing a month. It's going to be up there.
So whatever it is about, and you have no audience basically.
I don't know how they still exist. I mean, it's only a matter of time before they go the way of HuffPost and what's the most recent media company that just went under? I want to say Vice, but it wasn't Vice.
Oh, it was. I bring up so many things that I wish I had a fact checker here in the room sitting right across.
You need to get a Jamie, or
I need to get a Jamie. Yeah, that'll come one day.
But no, it is at this stage of irrelevance. The only problem is they're artificially propped up where they create their own faux sense of relevance, despite not just being irrelevant but being totally destructive. This year is going to be. It may not be the revolutionary year, but it's going to be pretty damn close.
They're calling it the men and women in lab coats, the black swan, right? You heard that saying?
I've heard this. I've heard the saying. I've watched the movie, and I still don't understand what the reference. What the black swan is.
Yeah, well, it's going to be the year that something big is going to happen. Now, what that something big is, who knows?
I mean, there's any number of plausible.
Yes. So that's what I want to ask you. 2024, in my estimate, will be a year that changes America and changes North America politically. Will I'll say we, I'm not American. Will America have their election in November? Where are we headed towards? I'm very curious as to your thoughts on what's going to happen with Trump. We saw Maine, Colorado, what happened in Colorado, Maine just a couple of days ago. They're doing everything they can to keep him off the ballot. Is Biden going to run again? Obviously, he is, which is insane.
He's too far in. There's only one way out for him.
How do you see this going in, especially living in Florida and speaking to the people you speak to and being so politically inclined?
And I speak to people, despite what anyone might think of my niche or my silo. There's a lot of different ideologically not motivated, but this is ideological diversity in my silo. And then there's people who are more cynical than me. There's people who are more optimistic. You can sort of plot. There's only any number of things that can happen. It will be the biggest year ever because there's either going to be an election or there's not going to be an election. And so either way, if one of those two things are going to happen, and either way, if there's no election, it's only going to be because it's going to be the biggest year ever. What's it going to be? So let's start with the easiest one is, how could there not be an election this year?
Okay, there has to be an election. Let's start with that. And then
well, there does unless, I mean, we've seen what happens in Ukraine. In order to preserve democracy, you can impose martial law, suspend elections during wartime, so that you don't...
Haiti, same thing. Something similar happening there. So
that I can't pretend to be as familiar with that, but so we know there's one out for the election, martial law. You can suspend elections to preserve democracy. I mean, it's an oxymoron of 1984 proportions.
Yes.
How could they suspend the elections? Sorry, everyone who's listening to me struggle to
Me too
breathe.
now. I'm having a hard time breathing.
Oh God,
My congestion's
I'm not
getting really bad.
contagious anymore. I've been on antibiotics, so I know that I'm not contagious. But
I'm not worried about that. I'm just feeling it too. Maybe it's dry in this studio.
Ordinarily I'd be snorting I'd be clearing my sinuses more regularly than I have been because I don't want to give too much ASMR to the.
Maybe we do need that scotch after all. I mentioned scotch to
and I said
Viva before.
I can't.
I don't think it's a good idea. We should drink like during this, but you never know. Okay.
So how can you could suspend elections for a number of reasons, or find a number of pretexts. The interesting one that I find is that, they had their, what was the thing that they did to replicate the spread of a pandemic prior to COVID? I want to say Agenda 2019 or something. They had these digital games where they released a pandemic and all this crap. And then the pandemic happened. Allegedly or apparently, they're also holding a one for like a cyber attack. A cyber attack that would make COVID look like, if you listen to Klaus Schwab, it would look like a walk in the park. So a massive cyber attack. You can't hold elections. What do you do? Okay, I don't know. You can have another pandemic. I don't think that play is not going to work again because they screwed it up so badly the first time.
And they tried to ignite that just a couple of months ago, right? They were
they've been like, a new strain.
Nobody bought it. Nobody went with it. So now they're like, all right.
I don't think they can get away with the pandemic again unless it's I put it in quotes, unless it's a real one where like people actually see it. There can be a terrorist attack, and that's the one that really concerns me the most. And I don't like talking about it because I don't like putting that juju out in the universe.
Well, that's the black swan event.
That's a big one, and it's like you see what happens you see what happened in Israel on October 7. Mm-hmm. Regardless of, I've got my questions and I've got my reservations about the official narrative. One thing is undeniable: the atrocity occurred, and then you say how, and well, because borders weren't secure, because you took for granted certain strengths maybe that you didn't have, or you overlooked certain weaknesses that you knew you had. You've got a situation in the States now where you've got 300,000, I'm not calling them undocumented, they are illegal aliens
per month
who have no vetting whatsoever. There's criminals in there. There's terrorists in there because you caught a couple, so there's more. A month coming in to the country that has and I'm not faulting them for this, the most expansive Second Amendment protections on earth. That's good for law-abiding citizens, but it's not exactly good when you have illegal terrorist potential immigrants,
enemies coming through,
who can get firearms equally, not equally easily, but nonetheless. And so that's the most obvious, the most real danger. And you got a fucking Biden administration. It's not that they don't care; they know damn well what's going on, and it's part of the plan. But should something happen by virtue of their total negligence, well, then they get to capitalize off the catastrophe. And so
it benefits them.
Yeah, but it's by design. It'll benefit us long run because you let so many people in. At some point in time, you say, well, we can't ship them all back. That would be immoral. So let's fast track them to citizenship, knowing damn well how they're going to vote. So you've illegally imported an entire demographic of voters. So even in the most fortunate of circumstances, all that you're doing is illegally importing the next generation of voters.
We'll get back to episode 156 of the Drive-By podcast in just a moment. But first up, I want to tell you about Les Délices Lafrenière 2024. It's a brand new year. Wishing you all the best from the entire crew at all 5 locations of Les Délices Lafrenière. Hope you have a good one. Remember, this year, no doubt about it, again, will be a year of celebration. I know I have tons of celebrations coming up for me in my life and my family this year. So maybe you have some of the same things happening in your life, maybe a big wedding, you'll want to get it designed and order your custom cake from Les Délices La Frenay, una bella figura, which means they're going to make it look classy and beautiful, and you won't look bad. That's what bella figura is. Trust the experts at Les Délices La Frenay. Or maybe you're just looking to get a cake for a birthday, themed cake made the way you want it for the person you're getting this cake for. Maybe they're a hockey fan. They'll do a custom hockey cake. Or maybe they love their Louis Vuitton purse and there's somebody that likes that kind of stuff, or glasses, and they'll make the custom cake for that very special person in your life. Les Délices La Frenay, 5 Montreal locations. Check them out.
Less fortunate circumstances, you import, let's just say 3,000. Now, you saw what 2,000 people did in Israel. Purportedly one of the safest borders on earth. 2,000 people did that.
Can you imagine 30,000? Yeah.
The only difference being, you have to pick a state conveniently, because some states are much more heavily armed than others. So you don't want to break into the house of the guy who has got a gun.
Don't go through Texas.
Don't go through Texas. Don't go through Florida. I wouldn't go through Alabama. There's certain states I wouldn't go through.
California, no problem.
California, New York.
Yeah.
I mean, highly densely populated places, gun-free zones. I mean, it's an easy prediction to make because it's just already virtually written. And so, catastrophic border policy, which is going to translate into votes later on, fast-track them to citizenship, put them in, allow them to enroll in the military, allow them to enroll in police force. What's the government done? They've basically imported their own private military. There's a very, very important, I don't know who said it, but basically that the police, the military, has to consist of citizens. Otherwise, where does the loyalty of those military and police lie, if not to the nation?
Yeah, it's
to the people who allowed them to be in there. To the politicians, you've just basically privatized your own military.
Exactly.
And then if there is a catastrophic terrorist attack, we can't have voting in booths because it'll be like Iraq after the liberation. And I'll put that in quotes for anybody who's not watching this.
Yeah, back to mail-in.
And
you know what happens?
Digital. now let's make it even easier, because we can't do mail-in. This is going to be too much time to count them.
Oh, digital.
Let's just go. Let's go app.
Oh yeah.
Let's let everyone vote by app. And so that's how I can see them stealing another election. And I've been on a transition where I didn't call it stolen. I called it fortified as a joke. They stole 2020. There's just no question about it. It's just a question of how you want to attribute the theft. I don't attribute it to Dominion vote switching servers in Germany. I attribute the theft to suppressing information that changed the way people voted.
Yeah.
It's theft. And so how are they going to try to do it in 2024? Or, not to get too black-pilled, assassinations. It's just like when the full force of this deep state, which assassinated JFK, regardless of anybody who doesn't...
And his brother.
You got his nephew and his son of the two, running now as maybe one of the wild cards, but some people think, not controlled opposition, but maybe part of the system. Set the RFK Jr. thing aside. You got that same institution that's been going after Trump since 2016. He wasn't supposed to win in 2016, but he did. He wasn't supposed to win in 2020. He did, but he didn't. And now he's more popular than he's ever been, and it seems like it's almost an inevitable disaster from their perspective. What do you do after indictments don't work, after Russiagate collusion lies don't work, after fake insurrections don't work? I mean, you've only got one choice left. And then you got Vivek Ramaswamy, who I think would be a good...
You like him?
I should say I love him.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Have you spoken to him?
I've had him on the channel.
Oh, you did?
I'm going to have him on. I don't know when this is going to broadcast, but I'm having him on this Friday.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll watch that.
I'm not. In as much as you know someone.
So tomorrow, if you're watching this right now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. At vivafrei.com or on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. No, I don't know him from a hole in the wall. I've seen his progression. I've had my hesitations as well, and I have my doubts on certain things. People call him an Obama 2.0. The plagiarist stuff. Have you heard this?
No.
Okay, there's a video going around purportedly showing Vivek
stealing
clips.
Yes, from Obama.
No, I'm not going to be forgiving on someone just because I like them. That's bullcrap, and people have to chill a little bit on that. They're using these cliched give the keys to the car analogies. Everybody's used them 1,000 times.
Right.
You want plagiarism, it's going to have to be a little more specific and a little more unique than that. Setting that aside, I like Vivek. I think he's should something happen to Trump, he's a good fill-in. Seems like the deep state's already picked their favorite in Nikki Haley. But, so assassinations...
But does something happen to Trump? What's your...
Where would I?
That's big.
You're betting on something like it's infinitely more likely that nothing happens in terms of safety wise than something happens.
Will he be on the ballot?
I'm saying he's going to be on the ballots, and that's my prediction. The Supreme Court, my sweet merciful goodness, they've got to step in sooner than later. My theory about this is everybody knows it's a foregone conclusion. He's going to be on the ballot. These rogue DAs are or I should say Secretary of State in Maine, these rogue judges are overstepping the bounds of their judicial authority. They know it damn well. In Colorado.
Mm-hmm. They overturned Colorado, right?
No. Well, they overturned it, but overturned the unfavorable lower court decision to Trump. So the lower court, this judge named something Wallace, she came out with her court order saying, yes, Trump engaged in insurrection, but Article 14, subparagraph 3, exclusion for insurrection, it doesn't apply to the office of the presidency. That was her ruling. So everybody said it was great for Trump because it was a win. He's on the ballot. Mm-hmm. I said, it's like, who the fuck does this judge think she is to come to a determination of criminal law, basically, to declare that Trump participated in insurrection? So she did that. Then the higher court comes in and says, yeah, we agree with her finding of fact. Trump engaged in insurrection. And by the way, they have to show more deference to a lower court's appreciation of fact than law. But in law, they said, we disagree. Article 14, subparagraph 3 applies to the presidency. So Trump is excluded from the ballot. He's disqualified because he engaged in insurrection, but we're staying our own decision. We're suspending our own decision pending the Supreme Court, other courts getting involved. They did this 4-3. So even in deep blue pockets of Colorado, 7 Democrat judges, only 4 of them came to this mental gymnastics bullshit to get him off the ballot. The other 3, who are Democrat diehard judges as well, Democrat appointed, they said no, we've never seen anything like this in our 30 years on the bench. This is not justice. This is not a court anymore. That's what happened out of Super Colorado. So I think they all know they're overstepping the bounds. He's going to be on the ballot. Supreme Court has just got to step in sooner than later. But this like pinprick sort of torture. Here's a little needle. Here's a little needle. Someone will please lash out like you did on January 6th so we can find another way to say, we're coming in with more government. We're coming in with more security, more surveillance, whatever, in order to fortify 2024. So that's it. We'll see. He's going to be on the ballot if he's alive. And then the real the question is, it's like,
I hope not, because
it's crazy. You don't like having these thoughts.
No.
Because if something were to happen to him, first of all,
forget it.
Just hypothetically,
there could be a civil war because that'll be an attack on the people that support him, and it'll be
cataclysmic. And now, first of all, he's 70. Like, people can also just die of natural causes.
Sure.
And no one would believe it.
No, that's the problem.
He could have a heart attack. No one would believe it. They'll say it's an FBI heart attack gun. If he, God forbid, something violent, I mean, it's going to be the end of any form of a cohesive society. And I don't know where it goes from this. So, God forbid. Yeah. And then the same thing for Joe Biden. Like I can write the book. Joe Biden's on his way out anyhow. What better way to capitalize politically off of his exit from this earth than to make it look like a politically motivated incident?
Right.
Use him as a sacrificial lamb.
Exactly.
To demonize the far right, the extreme MAGA.
Yep.
Get a David DePop to do something to Joe Biden, a lefty illegal immigrant from Canada to come in with a hammer so they can blame it on extreme MAGA republicanism, and then exploit the tragic demise of Biden for political profit.
To win the election.
They've done this thing over and over again. It's no different than throwing a brick through your own headquarter office and saying, look, we got vandalized, send us money.
That is wild to think about both of those scenarios happening.
There's so many things. And then some people say, like, well, nothing's going to happen to Biden because if something happens to Biden, you got RFK as sort of the insurance that they don't want RFK in a position of power.
They don't.
If something happens to Trump, then you've got Vivek would have an uphill battle. I think a lot of people at the Trump base would rally behind Vivek because the alternative is what? DeSantis or Haley or Chris Christie is not even an option.
No.
They would never get behind Haley. But
what about there's no chance that at last second, well, not last second, but in the next couple of months, he announces the Biden administration announces that he's not running, and maybe a guy like Newsom comes in.
So
is that a possibility? Because I've thought about that.
Yeah, well, and I talk about this with Robert Barnes from my Sunday show all the time.
Yeah.
And Barnes,
because it's not going to be Harris.
Well, no, but Robert Barnes' position in this, and I have to defer to his expertise.
Okay,
this is Gavin Newsom, if you can believe it, is even less popular than Joe Biden. Gavin Newsom outside of California and New York appeals to nobody.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris
Trudeau.
is even less popular than look. the outside shot, I would think Michelle Obama would be the most likely substitute if Biden had to back out or were to back out or were to exit scene.
Okay.
Michelle Obama, I saw an analysis showing that like she's following a very similar trajectory to Obama when he ran, writing a novel. She's the speaker, I think, at the convention, which they're doing. I think it's somewhere near Chicago. So there's a number of indications there. She's, to be totally cynical because this is the way the world is, checks off two identity politics boxes, black and a woman, versus Gavin Newsom, evil white man. Quite
From
literally
California.
looks like the villain out of RoboCop. But no, and I can easily see like Joe Biden having to pull out because he's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Yeah, he could get diagnosed with like advanced stage Alzheimer's right now, and everyone's like, well, what the hell just happened for the last 4 years?
4 years.
Forget about it.
Who's been running the show for 4 years?
So
it's scary when you see him. And can you imagine that was Donald Trump on a daily? You remember when Trump one time held his glass with two hands?
Yep.
And they made a big deal about it. Then he walked down the wet ramp where he was trying to be careful because it was wet at one of his functions. And he was careful going down the ramp, and they made this big deal about him. Biden has those moments 15 times a day, and no one says a thing.
That to me, he's clearly demented. He's clearly suffering
incapacitated.
From Alzheimer's.
Yeah,
anybody who's had any experience with it, like my grandmother lived to 103. She was diagnosed with early onset dementia, I think at 86. So we anybody who's seen that look in somebody's eyes knows. You have moments where they're lucid, and then they're just they have that. I call it it's not a 2 mile stare. It's they have that stare.
Yeah.
Biden's he's been deficient for years now. And then they go after Trump. I mean, it's so preposterous. Trump might be a little overweight, but not by any means. No, when I say like not even by any means of what people think. Like when he got booked in Georgia, and they did the mugshots and they put his weight on, and then they accuse him of lying on his weight on the mugshot, as if he's the one who lies about it, as if he just puts in his weight and it's not a booking thing. I think he weighed 213 pounds, which is it's a little overweight, but he's a bigger guy and he's not 5'5.5". But no, it's preposterous. They accuse others of what they're doing. They accuse others of their own weaknesses, of their own foibles. It's confession through projection. So Biden is clearly demented, so they accuse Trump of being demented. Biden's family is clearly corrupt, has blackmail material from all other nations, or it has blackmail material being held by other nations, so they accuse Trump of having it. Biden accuses... they accuse Trump of pissing on hookers in Moscow, when... by all accounts, it's probably Hunter Biden pissing on hookers in Moscow. So it's whatever they accuse the other of doing is, it's true of themselves.
I don't ever, kind of like we discussed at the beginning of this podcast, I don't remember going back, growing up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, the Republicans and the Democrats having this disdain for each other. I mean, they never liked each other, but not at this level.
Not at this level.
Now it's like pure... vile hatred towards each other.
Now it's gone from defaming, besmirching, discrediting to trying to lock up in jail your
opponent. Yeah,
they called Bush racist. They called him mini Hitler. And they called him stupid, and they tried to discredit him as a president. They didn't try to lock him up. They didn't try to lock up his kids. They didn't try to dispose of his assets in various. It went from dirty politics to, I say third world, Eastern Europe, communist country. People understand. Like I just put together a timeline in a tweet the other day. They tried to undermine Trump's first presidency by saying he colluded with Russia to get elected. They spent 3 years trying to convince the public he was an illegitimate, unlawful president. People don't understand, even in the context of that. They had that fabricated Steele dossier, the Steele dossier which said Trump was pissing on hookers and sheets that they knew was a bullshit story, that the intelligence released to the media so that Yahoo News would publish it, so that the intelligence could then use that publication as a basis to get a warrant in front of a secret FISA court. The FBI and their counsel literally falsified evidence, overtly falsifying evidence that they submitted to a FISA court to get spy warrants, illegal FISA warrants, so they could spy on Trump's campaign. I mean, this is what they did the first time around. Second time around, I don't. If you thought that they deliberately released the pandemic or deliberately weaponized the pandemic so they could modify elections or change the rules of elections, I mean, if you don't think that, I don't know where you've been for the last little while. I believe that they certainly weaponized the pandemic to find a way to use it to exploit for the purposes of elections.
Yes.
And now they're trying to indict Trump in New York, Florida, D.C., Georgia. I mean, if you don't see what they're doing, you'll never see it.
Yeah.
And then the question is, what does it culminate with? What act does it culminate with? Is there going to be a great awakening? Is there going to be a point where even the people who say, yeah, I don't like Trump, but they'll do this to me the next time? I mean, are we going to get there? But it's crazy how they literally try to steal elections over and over again in the last 8 years. And they're accusing Trump of being the one who's trying to steal the election, get into power so he can never relinquish power. It's amazing. I don't know where it goes, because and you may be Canadian. If shit goes down in the South, I mean, if it goes down in America, it goes down everywhere.
It goes down that's why I said here in the North American front might not be the same after this year. And okay, so with what's going on in the States, with their election coming up in November, will it happen? Will it not happen?
It's going to be a big bloody year. I'm sorry to say big bloody. It's going to be a big darn year.
Yeah.
In all respects, news, social media, election coverage. So it's going to be from someone who's involved and immersed in it, it's going to be an opportunity. Just touch wood, pupu kanena hora, it stays civil.
What about here? I know you're in Florida and you're heading back home tomorrow, but what about here?
The question is, my only question with Canada having crossed back into the asylum is whether or not Canada's past the event horizon of its proverbial black hole. I'm not convinced that it's not past the point of no return, where even if it undoes the damage of the Trudeau regime for the last 8 years, you're not getting back to Canada as we knew it. You're just getting back to a Canada that's less evil and less dark than under the Trudeau regime. It's nuts. So you remember when Bill C-11, I'm going to forget which one it was. That was the online streaming act. Okay. When the O'Toole government's like, elect us, during the last election, and we'll overturn Bill C-11. Or we'll undo whatever it was. And I was like, you idiots, it hasn't even been passed yet. How about instead of promising to undo it once it gets passed, don't allow it to get passed?
Exactly.
And I said, what happens, everyone loves free speech, or tyrants love free speech right up until they get into a position of power.
Yeah.
They like to use it to get to power, and then once they're in power, they realize how it is the tool to overturn it. And so that's when they realize they have a change of heart. I'm not convinced that the Conservatives are not much different than the Liberals. We'll say we'll undo that terrible law when we get into power. Then you get into power, it's like, well, holy shit, now I can see some ancillary benefits to that law. So what's going to happen in Canada? I mean, the biggest changes of the last little while, first of all, the court systems seem to be broken in that they still haven't righted the wrongs of the COVID discrimination, the COVID abuses. That needs to happen. I don't know when that happens or if that happens.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think they've swept it all under the rug.
It is amazing. They swept it under the rug.
It's unreal you
had Brian Pecton and Maxime Bernier's charter challenges, which the court of appeal recently confirmed ratified as it being moot. So no longer an issue. Tossed out of courts after 9 months of litigation. It will never get heard again. But if it ever occurs again, you can come to court again, and then the government can continue with these abusive policies right up until the day before, stop them and say, moot, move on. I'm trying to think of what the other ones were. The courts washed their hands of all charter violation claims, which really confirms that we have a charter on digital paper in Canada, and it's not worth the paper. It's not worth the paper it's not written on.
Exactly.
Basically. Then you got the Online Streaming Act, so you've got censorship of the internets. Some people think if Trudeau's out of power, the solution is going to be, and this is my predicted here. Actually, I'm going to verbalize this for the first time ever. They're going to let Trudeau stay in, or Trudeau's going to stay in for as long as he possibly can, so that the relief is going to be when Trudeau is out and not any meaningful change coming from the Liberal Party. Then they'll slap in somebody. It won't be Chrystia Freeland. I think she's just as hated. Someone else will come in, new face of the Liberal Party, and they will not suffer the political consequences that they deserve, and all of the crap that they've done is going to basically stay in place. The censorship online, disinformation online, the link tax garbage. The link tax is the one now that Google's agreed to pay $100 million a year.
Yes.
So
to pay the
damage that they've done is not going to be undone.
Yeah.
And
Well, does he resign, you think? Will he? I don't think so. I think this guy is such a...
Well, he did that recent interview where he's like,
I saw a lot of those year ends. Yeah. So he's not going anywhere.
Not for the time being. Not until 2025.
Are they going to push him out? Meaning, does he resign, save face because his own party might say it's time for...
What scandal would have to break now?
I mean, they
say this is a bridge
he's had about 15 of them, so none of those took him down.
He had Blackface Gate, which was... But that's a new scandal of an old act. You had Boob Gate, where he elbowed the woman in Congress in the boob. You have SNC Lavalin, where he got ethics violation for firing Jody Wilson-Raybould for not prosecuting SNC Lavalin. Mm-hmm. You had the Aga Khan scandal, ethics violation. You had the We Charity, which didn't result in an ethics violation. I don't know. Find something out though about COVID. I mean, I'd like to follow the money on all of that stuff, but I could conceivably imagine some controversy that's even too much for Justin Trudeau.
I mean, look at how he handled the whole Nazi in Parliament. You remember when
it's unbelievable.
There were swastikas, and there were no swastikas. We were both at the Freedom Convoy, and let's say there was one there. We know it was probably planted or some freaking Yahoo,
some
crazy, right?
The Trudeau regime is a Nazi.
It was peaceful. It was a gathering of Canadians for the truckers. I was there with my mother-in-law, and that's what pretty much canceled me. Got a lot of hate from people. A couple of, 2 winters ago, I guess?
It was
2 winters. February, right? Yeah, 2 years ago, coming up. And and then, a Nazi, they don't vet the Nazi, they celebrate in Parliament. And when he does apologize, he apologizes on behalf of Parliament. He never takes responsibility. So nothing's taking this guy down. Nothing's taking him down. It's unless it's an election or unless Jagmeet decides to pull the plug. And... the polls indicate right now that Pierre Poilievre would win
a majority government. But I don't trust the polls for what they're worth.
No, I mean neither.
But then I also Jagmeet is too far gone as well. His only. It's an amazing thing. You think the argument or the accusation is that Jagmeet needs to hold this off until 2025 so he can get his federal pension.
After 6 years.
Yep.
Right.
And as far as I understand, it's a legitimate argument. I thought maybe it was factually incorrect.
No, it's true.
So I'm just because I always leave the window open that I might be wrong. Yeah. It doesn't look like it's wrong.
No.
Can you imagine that this man is already so concerned about his future that he needs to worry about a pension when he's 60? And I mean, I don't know. It's probably a good pension.
It's fantastic. But you know what? Like $175,000 a year for the rest of your life.
Is that adjusted for inflation? Because what's $175,000 going to be worth in 30 years?
Well, because a couple of years back, I remember it was 168, and then when I heard it recently, it was in the 170s. So there you go.
Imagine his concern right now is not being productive for the rest of his life to not have to worry about a pension. It's holy shit. I got to cling to power for a year and a half so that I can at least know that I've got my nest egg when I retire. It's terrible. I hate him. I absolutely hate him.
I dislike all these people.
I like you say dislike. So. I've gone
trying to be nicer in 2024. But, I use that word.
It's an amazing thing. The Nazi in Parliament. It blows my mind because had it been conservative,
forget it.
They would have found a way to put someone in jail for that. Like they would have called it an overt act of hate and gone after him. Although there's parliamentary immunity, they would have found a way to go after them criminally or something.
Yeah.
To say we didn't know and we didn't vet. You've got Zelensky in Parliament cheering this guy, and you think Zelensky doesn't know the history of Ukraine, and the fact that these idiots they're so bloody stupid. Mm-hmm. Like. They're sitting there, he valiantly fought the Russians during World War II.
Surprise, surprise.
Do any of you have half of a brain in your head? Like, who fought the Russians? Yeah. Oh, that's right, Nazis. Mm-hmm. And not just like fight. I had a friend whose grandfather fought with the Germans. There's a difference between a German soldier and SS.
Yeah.
It's like there's a difference between petty criminals and serial killers. Mm-hmm. It's unforgivable. And yet somehow, because he's purchased the media, he controls the media, and he basically controls people's lives. You cannot afford to speak out against the government if you rely on the government. Period.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so he survives that too. Should have ended. It should have ended everyone, and Chrystia Freeland should also be out of office. But what happens in the future? I mean, I don't. There probably will not be. I don't think there's going to be an election until 2025.
That's the scheduled. Right?
Yeah, that's the next one that's required by law.
Yes.
Unless there's a vote of no confidence in 2024, that's when it's going to happen. So I think that's what's going to happen. And Canada's just going to. It's comfortable enough here. It's peaceful enough here. Although crime is on the rise and shit's hitting the fan here too.
Yeah. Carbon tax, everything that
it's just like, can you imagine they're talking about not talking about crippling the Canadian economy for global climate concerns. You could shut Canada down and go dark,
Yep.
and it will have zero impact on the world. And by shutting Canada down and crippling its economy and outsourcing its pollution, all you do is actually exacerbate pollution because it outsources to China and India, and you enrich those countries, China and India, to the detriment of Canada. It's almost like looking at Biden's immigration policy, looking at Trudeau's economic policy. It's almost like the goal is to destroy the nations for the benefit of foreign interests. I mean, if that were the goal, and you had to do it differently, what would you be doing differently? There is no sense to make of it other than the fact that our elected officials are beholden to foreign interests over national interests, but for a great awakening of nationalists in the good sense.
Yep.
Although, screw it, I don't even care if anyone's going to call me a Nazi after this. Go ahead. I've already been called a Nazi on Twitter, ironically. In the absence of a great awakening of people saying we are not being governed by, subordinated to, or directed by unelected globalist interests. We're going to do what's in the best interest of our country. And oddly enough, that might be in the best interest of the world as well. If Canada, can you imagine, what would be good for global pollution? If Canada were to stop outsourcing natural resource exploitation, do it here, do it a little bit better, do it a little bit more economically and more environmentally friendly, and not indirectly but necessarily outsource it to China and India, be good for Canada, and oddly enough, better for the world. It's just that the interests of our politicians are outright absolutely captured. Whether it's through blackmail or the promises of future gigs, speaking gigs, positions on globalist institutions, it's obvious because they would not. If their goal were to surreptitiously destroy a nation and make it look organic and by accident, what would they be doing differently?
Yeah,
not much.
And then he gets on a plane and
gallivants
to Jamaica.
He gallivants around and then says, no. And then he's got his sycophants on social media who they may be paid bots. Oh. Good. I'm going to say,
well, look,
the influencers for COVID, but
they've got to be paid bots because these didn't exist 6 months to a year ago.
Well,
at the level it is now there's all this.
It's coordinated.
I stand with Trudeau. All of a sudden, who are these people?
But there's been some Dale Smith has always been one who's been out there.
There's a couple
licking boots.
Yes.
But they say everyone's entitled to vacation. Yeah. And one person said he paid for it himself. I was like, you. First of all, everyone's entitled to vacation. True, but maybe not so true. I'm a CEO. If you pick a certain job that doesn't afford vacations, you're not entitled to a vacation. It's like you get what you sign up for. And unfortunately, being the leader of a country might mean you don't get to jag off to Jamaica for however long. Or
maybe how about get on? I remember days back in the day when we were younger when prime ministers got on commercial flights, didn't they?
I can't. I mean,
I remember. No, I remember.
Trudeau. I remember. The other thing, he can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
He can't go anywhere.
Well, that's because he's hated.
He's
despised.
I think he's hated by his Secret Service, but at least their livelihood is predicated on the public hatred for and scorn for Trudeau. Yeah. But the idea that he pays for his vacations himself, he's entitled to vacation. I mean, when you screw off on vacation on the first iteration of the Truth and National Reconciliation federal holiday that you created,
you go to Tofino and you start surfing.
These are overt acts of humiliation.
Yeah.
It's what abusers do.
Yeah.
But no, the bot accounts. You heard about it was an oldish story where we knew that people were being paid as influencers to promote COVID propaganda. Blacklocks recently reported that they got a list of a number of these social media influencer accounts that were being paid to push COVID propaganda. And the government basically said, no, you don't have to disclose it because if you were to disclose it, it would be, quote, very embarrassing for the government it would be very embarrassing one way or the other. And you look at these accounts and some of them have zero followings, like single digit, double digit followings. Yep. And you realize that the government is doing nothing other than laundering taxpayer dollars to surreptitiously create government propaganda to support the inhumane, unconstitutional, unlawful, and unscientific policies that they had been imposing on Canadians. Yeah. And they try to make it look like Canadians want it. I mean, I don't know how much worse it can get. I mean, that's the bottom line. I don't know how much worse society could get.
Yeah, I see your tweets on a daily basis, and sometimes you single out, those specific account users and say, go on this account. Does this look like an account of somebody who's a real, I've seen you do that, and
it's crazy. I'm like,
it really is.
I feel bad because some people pretend after you do that it's like I'm directing my followers I don't know, to harass. First of all, I always tell people not to do it because you end up doing anything, and then you get like the Rachel Gilmos of the world pretending to be the victim when they're the abusers. But the bottom line, if you post something on Twitter, you're doing it because you want people to read it. So you should thank me for raising the awareness of your profile, not criticize me. Yeah. But I'm not going to not call out somebody just because they're a small account, because that would make me a pompous, arrogant prick. Mm-hmm. I'll interact and engage gleefully with everyone, small and large. Yeah. The other thing is, when someone's going to be called an influencer and take my fucking taxpayer dollars to support this crap, and then I look at them, they're like, they're paid bots. I'd like some clarity on it. Yeah. Here's their opportunity. Are you a real person? If you're a real person, tell us the story. Yeah. I reached out. I tagged one of them. I think it was.
Or come on and speak to me.
Well, they won't. But I can understand why they'll never do it, because I am every now and again. Even I go through my Twitter. It's like, my God, Dave, you're a little bit of you're an asshole. And it's like, but
it's not that you're an asshole. You're also very well prepared, and you know what you're talking about. So for them to debate you, they better be ready, because
I like to think that I do not pad, but I support my insults with fact. Yes. It's one thing. To come out and call someone just names is one thing. I do call people names, but I give the receipts as to why. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, when it's a known thing like Hakeem Jeffries out of the States, when it's a known fact that he's just a scumbag, then I don't have to bring the receipts with every tweet, and I can just go straight for the name calling. But no, even with something like, okay, someone's a propagandist, hack, a lying government shill, or paid propagandist, and here's why. Mm-hmm. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Like, we can have a good discussion. Twitter is not meant for discussion. And so we're not going to pretend that tweets are a way of having a debate, but I'll certainly call somebody out for taking money from the government, putting up a post that says, stay at home, closer together, and did you tell people that you got paid for this post? Because if you didn't, we're entitled to know.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think of, in a couple of his year-end interviews, Trudeau mentioned the MAGA. You saw that, a couple of those year-end, the MAGA. So, for example, Pierre Poilievre is getting support from
he's importing the MAGA, Trump MAGA
political philosophies, whatever. That really angers me when I see that, because anytime they disagree with anything, okay, it's always that. They always go to that. They go, back in the 2021, 2020, it was COVID, it was racism, it was misogyny, it was then with the Freedom Convoy, the freezing of bank accounts. It just seems to me that anytime he disagrees, or the Liberals disagree with any of the conservative platforms, they immediately will go to that. And they feel like this is a way they could win and make their base stronger by saying, oh, it's MAGA, it's Donald Trump. Absolutely. It's like, and what I tell people all the time, because I have some people that I know too will say to me, oh, Frank, he's another Donald Trump. And I go, can you explain to me how he's another Donald Trump? And what is Donald Trump?
No,
while we're at it, tell me who Donald Trump is. Start off with
question about what's wrong with Donald Trump?
Right.
Stop. And I can answer the question. Yeah. Oh, mean tweets. He's brazen. He's abrasive. All right. You don't have to have politicians babysit your kids. The question is, was he effective as a politician? And the answer, obviously, by comparison, was yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. And they say, the video montage, who puts it out? You got Seamus O'Regan, who's one guy, another member of parliament that I follow. Yeah.
Former media guy too, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, he does look a lot like Doogie Howser, but I think that's just a coincidence. I hear them say it, and then I immediately, because I have my thought process, like, accusing him of importing Trumpian politics into Canada. What are you doing by doing that? You're importing Democrat leftist politics into Canada. Mm-hmm. You are doing exactly what you're accusing Poilievre of doing. Yeah. He's not importing Trumpian politics by any means. In fact, the guy is polite to a flaw. Mm-hmm. He might be a little pompous and arrogant. The Apple thing was fantastic. Yeah. There's nothing similar between Trump and Poilievre in terms of demeanor. No. Other than politics. Yeah. And so if the idea is, you're importing a nationalist, populist type politics, a smaller government type politics. All right, that's not
good to me.
Absolutely, but like the idea to say like, he's importing the divisive American politics. Yeah. No, that's exactly what you're doing with that accusation. Yes. And you're trying to demonize Canadians as being extreme MAGA Republicans. That's Hakeem Jeffries of the House, or the former House Speaker. That's his favorite phrase in the world. Yeah. Extreme MAGA Republicans. They just write them off, and they're trying to do that in Canada. So oddly enough, when he says Poilievre is importing Trump politics, it's Trudeau and his sycophants that are importing liberal, divisive identity politics into Canada. But they've been doing that since Obama. Can you imagine, when was Obama in power? He was in power until 2016, so there was an overlap between him and Trudeau.
Yeah, for about, not very...
No, it's like a year.
Years.
But there is no question that the fall of racial and social cohesion, or at least the decline in Canada, coincides with the decline in America, which, and I lived through it, was never more exacerbated than under Obama's presidency, which is ironic. Your first black president, although half black, and it drives me nuts when everybody they want to focus only on he's got a white mother and a black father, and they want to focus only on the black father because it's socially, politically beneficial to do so. That's racism.
Yep.
But, the first black president, and half black, I don't know how you qualify it, who was the most destructive on racial cohesion in the United States. And what happened with Trudeau, he imported all of that bullshit, divisive identity politics from the U.S.
He did the same thing.
Here.
Yep.
Made everybody in Canada see each other only as man, woman, gay, black, lesbian, Jew, Muslim, whatever. And it's never been worse. So it's the irony, but he's the one doing it.
Yeah. I noticed something on, I think it was last night's YouTube video that you did. You were talking about, who was the girl? A woman, Laura, transhumanism.
Oh yeah, Laura Aboli.
Aboli.
I think I don't want to. It's not to be mean. I had never heard of her before. Apparently, she's a Fox News or former Fox News anchor, and she put out a 4-minute speech about.
I thought that speech was great.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I may not agree with the final conclusion as to where we're going with all of this. The gender ideology, the social isolation. I think we're going somewhere else, which I can understand. She's going with. It's going to a world of transhumanism where we're going to merge with computers, and humanity as we know it is going to cease to exist.
Right.
I could just, be content with it's going to population reduction or social disorder. Take down the West, take down Western society.
Yeah. Because
I think who's behind all of this, or what entities are behind all this? I'd say like Chinese government, CCP, not Chinese people, and toxic application algorithms, which... If anybody thinks it's weird that TikTok in China has a different algorithm recommendation than TikTok in America,
it's for a reason.
That's for a damn reason.
Yeah.
And so, but it was an amazing speech.
Yeah, I saw that. It was really cool. Anytime you're in town, it makes me happy when you text me. It makes me happy when you text me, period. I'm like, oh, I just got a text from Viva. But anytime you're in town and you find time to come on the Drive By podcast, makes my day. Well, it makes my week, because honestly, I enjoy having this open discussion with you. It's as I mentioned earlier, your third appearance, and it makes a difference having people like you out there, because without people like you speaking the truth and debating others and showing the other side, having a balanced conversation, we really do live in a world today of one-sided story. And people get lost in that. People need to, at least, they don't have to agree with you, but at least be open to listening to what you have to say, as opposed to, quickly just saying, he's a crazy Trump following,
No, not to play any. If I want to play the identity politics card, I can. When someone calls me a Nazi on Twitter,
which is,
it's just
Jewish.
stupid. My granddad fled Nazi Germany in 1936, but it's been an interesting transition, because I can appreciate it's been a transition. I've been reluctant to discuss politics when I first started my YouTube channel. Remember, I told somebody put a political comment in the chat, and I said, keep politics out of this. And then the guy replies, I don't know why I bother with your stupid little channel. Anyhow, I never wanted to talk politics because it never made me feel good. And then, I start touching delicate subjects, but then the world hits the shit. And it's like, okay, well, what am I going to, I got no choice. Like when I ran for federal office, I didn't run because I wanted to join the toxic shithole of the government. There was no choice. Like, what are you going to do? And now it's like, there's no choice. What am I going to do? Pretend to go back to whatever, I won't say vapid existence I had. Like, you can't go back to pretending that you haven't seen it. And then, I can appreciate people saying, Viva, you got you're swearing a little more than you did 4 years ago. You're fucking right, I am. Because the things are
mad.
Exponentially worse than they were 4 years ago. Yeah. And at some point, being polite doesn't doesn't work. Being polite will not work on the people who are too dead asleep. And being polite will not work on the people who are just the liars. So, I'll never change the liars. But at some point when someone's, sleepwalking, politely massaging their forehead might not be enough. They might need a cold glass of water in their face. And just to the extent that people just don't know what's going on out there. There's people out there who they don't know basic facts, like basic things about what we've gone through in terms of
everything we discussed in the last, let's say, hour or so. There's people
they don't know.
There's a lot of people who don't know any of that stuff.
There's people out there who still genuinely and sincerely believed we were never told that the jab was going to stop transmission. I'm like, before I call anyone a name, I'm going to make sure that they're sincere. It's like, okay, do you remember this tweet by Albert Bourla, April 1st, 2021? 100% effective against cases in South Africa.
Yep.
And then they're going to say, but then you can see in the authentic person when it starts to break. And then they're like, oh, but that was they didn't say against transmission. They just said against serious cases. I was like, okay, click on the goddamn link in the tweet, and then you'll see where it says prevents cases versus prevents infection, or it says prevents a severe hospitalization or severe cases versus prevents cases. It's in there. It's in there. And then you're like, and then there's this whole. You could see it happening in real time for people who are still reflective enough to say, "Holy crap, I got duped." Or like.
A lot more people, there's no doubt about it, at least in my circles and people I speak to, who realized they got duped. Maybe they're not admitting it, but they're kind of looking at you going, all right, you may have been onto something there.
No, I know.
But there's a lot more people, like you said, that still have their head in the sand. And it's like if they were to come out now and admit they were duped, I mean, it would just ruin their, everything that their existence, everything they've believed.
But and that's hard enough if you're the only person whose existence has been impacted by your being duped. When there's people who come and say, I just played Russian roulette with my children. Or there's other people out there who said, Frank, I have a high school friend who died in their sleep. Just like that.
How old?
My age, but I won't say when it happened because I don't want to. It's a small community.
Yeah.
And then you say like, okay, well, you ask the obvious questions, and it's like it's anything but. But when that happens enough, people are like, well, holy crap. I mean, I know more people who have had adverse events or death temporally adjacent to a jab than I've ever known of anybody from COVID itself. And when that happens to enough people, some people will open their eyes. The other people who may have played Russian roulette with the people they were entrusted to protect on this earth. How do you recognize that when you can't even predict, let alone assess the damage that you might have done? The easiest way is either A, keep doing it, or B,
put the blinders on and
put your fingers in yours and sing.
Yeah.
But there's who was it? I don't think it was Jimmy Dore who originally said it, but you don't have to awaken the sheep, you have to mobilize the lions. I forget what it is. And also, you don't need to wake up everybody.
No.
Not even half of everybody. You need to sensitize enough people to make the discussion, popular, to make the discussion tolerable, and also to affect meaningful change.
Yeah, and to ask questions, because that's the most important thing. That's all we have. If we can't ask questions, and the fact that over the course of those years, you couldn't ask questions. That should have been the eye-opener to everybody. It's like, why is me asking this question? Like, even if you ask your doctor a question, and they gave you an abrupt answer, almost like you were nuts, right? Like, just shut up, I'm the doctor here. That should sound the alarm bells to you. In my mind, it was like, okay, why are they getting mad at me? I just asked a question.
Well, we had a doctor who, we had asked, is it safe for kids? And the doctor says, yeah. And then my wife, who's not a nobody, small brain, who has a PhD in neuroscience, just says, how do you know? And there was no good answer to that. There was no good answer to that.
Yeah.
And that's when, but yeah, we're heading into a different realm now where I think people understand, or more people are awakening to the fact that A, we've been duped, B, we need to have these discussions, and C, we're being governed by the corrupt.
Yeah.
And so, if I can play a role in shaking a few people out of their deep sleepwalk,
you do.
It doesn't give me pleasure to do, but it gives me a little bit of pleasure to do.
Well, what I mentioned at the top of this podcast about how you broke down the whole New Year's Eve on CNN, to me just shows that you're not only talking about politics, U.S., Canadian, Ukraine, whatever it is that, you could talk about anything, and you pick something as mainstream as that, I hate that word, but on CNN, and you catch that. It catches your attention, right? And you dissect that whole evening. You break it down. You have to watch. Which date was this video? Yesterday. So January 1st.
January 1st on Rumble is where the full stream
go on
is.
Rumble. Go
Viva
check it
Frei,
out.
Viva-Frei.
And just watch how he breaks this down. And it's eerie, actually, as he's, from the countdown and everything we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. But the fact that you could do that as well, you're not just talking law, which is your area of expertise, or politics. You wanted to get into politics to change things on your own. You moved to Florida. You got this deal with Rumble. You're also doing things like, you could talk about anything. And literally, I could throw anything at you and you'll have an opinion on it, and a sound opinion on it.
After having done my research. Because
after having done your research.
When the war in Ukraine broke out, and I appreciated, I don't know enough to have an opinion,
right?
But I don't believe what they're telling me.
Right.
That's the starting point.
Exactly.
Of skepticism.
Yeah, and then now, as time has gone by, you have a deeper opinion and knowledge on that, right? And you don't take everything. Don't believe every single thing.
Remember when they said there were no chemical bioweapons lab in Ukraine? Remember when they said that?
Yeah.
When someone said there's bioweapons labs in Ukraine that are funded by the U.S. tax dollars, and they said, Victoria Nuland, there's no bioweapons factories, but there's bio-research facilities. Yeah. And we're so scared that Russia's going to take them over. No, it's like, once you get to the reflexive, whatever they just told me I know is a lie, so now I got to go find out why. Yeah. It's the beginning of enlightenment.
Yeah, and you know what? You will be enlightened and I say you as in you, even though I'm talking to you, you'll be enlightened if you haven't subscribed to Viva Frei's channel, do so right now, right after watching this podcast, because honestly, he's on. He never misses a day, even when he's sick. He had this throat infection, and he was on doing it. And I try not to miss any of your vlogs as well. Whatever they call it.
The vlog, VLAWG. Oh, yeah. Freddie, and if I seem under the weather today, now I'm on the mend. But gosh, I'm sitting up in the country. I can't even stare at the sun. I can't stare at a light bulb because my head's going to explode. Yeah. And then I go down to the lake, churn out just one video on something that's important so people can. Yeah.
Well, you can make this is what I'm getting at. You could turn anything as simple as, something that no one thought of, or maybe things that people think of every day, but it's something as simple staring right at you, into a discussion, which is what makes Viva Frei so interesting. And you have an amazing perspective on life, where we're headed. We heard some pretty big bombshells today. I'm freaked out by 2024 and what might be coming.
The other thing is this is one of the Scott Adams prediction techniques. If you throw out a number of options, something's going to happen.
You're going to look like a star.
There will either be an election or there won't. Bam! I just made a proper prediction.
So Viva Frei,
Viva Frei on Rumble.
On Rumble.
Viva Frei, THE, Viva Frei on Twitter. For the angrier, sassier Viva Frei. And
keyboard warriors.
Who did I tell to go fuck off this morning? There was someone I said. No, I swore. Oh God. Okay, and then vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
With your partner doing that.
Robert Barnes. Yeah. That's our massive, wonderful community. Like Facebook. Okay. We'll end it with this thought experiment. Yeah. If you cannot, Kierkegaard said life can only be understood backwards, but it's got to be lived forwards. If we're just going backwards now, and we trying to think of the most recent lie, which I think we can now all agree, January 6th, which was billed as an insurrection. We now know it was a violent protest, but we now know it was greatly facilitated by actions or omissions of government. Mm-hmm. It was greatly weaponized afterwards for political profit. So they lied to us about January 6th. By the way, they also destroyed evidence from the committee, but whatever. Mm-hmm. They lied about January 6th so that courts now could abuse of it to try to get Trump off the ballot. They lied about the jab in terms of efficacy, efficiency, etc. Mm-hmm. They lied about its adverse events. They lied about it impacting women's menstrual cycles. There was an article in 2020-ish, and they said, no, it won't impact menstrual cycles. And then lo and behold, it does. They lied about that. They lied about the origins of COVID. Lied. Lied.
Yep.
Covered it up. They lied about, let me see if we're going back to 2019.
I love this, how we're wrapping this up, by the way.
Because it's going to blow your mind. They lied. I'm just trying to think of what happened between 2016 and 2020. Origin of COVID, lied. There's something in there I'm forgetting about. Forget all the fake news about Trump. 2016, they lied about Russian collusion. Mm-hmm. Lied. They lied about not spying on the Trump campaign. Lied. Now you know that. That's just the last 8 years. And you're going to think that you know what happened in 9/11? You think what they've been lying to you forever. So once you understand that, it will change the way you go about viewing the world. And it's an unfortunate thing. Once you understand that, you can never look back at the world normally, the same way you did again.
Yeah.
But once you understand that, it will change how you move forward in a better way. But it'll also change, and it's the most destabilizing thing in the world, how you look at everything.
Yeah, and it does exactly that. It changes your outlook towards everything. I just watched, if you get a chance, when you get back, maybe you saw it already, the brand new documentary, John Lennon.
No.
Did you see this?
No, absolutely
It's a series, like a little, I think a 3-part
Cool, that's
series.
short enough for my attention span.
And they actually talk about a conspiracy, which you may have heard over the years, that they
killed John Lennon.
They killed John Lennon, and right, for a reason. And I believe it was Nixon who had the FBI and CIA.
Dude, I'm totally watching this.
You have to watch it, okay? So I think it's just a 3-part series. But after watching it and being a fan of John Lennon and his music, and having known the story over the years, having been in radio and being a music lover, but seeing this documentary, it opens your eyes, it opens your mind, and I see it and go, wow, I feel like almost you feel stupid in a way, right? You're like, I just assumed it was, the guy who killed him, Mark David Chapman, and that's it. That's what you take. You just like assume, oh no, that's what I was told over the years. That's who it was. Never thought anything else. Same thing with 9/11, right? You think, what you see is what you got that day, and then there was terrorists and this and that.
Which it was undeniable elements.
Yes,
of it. And then there's a broader question.
Exactly,
How?
But there's always more to the story, and I think conspiracy, and people throw out that word and that term so loosely nowadays. Okay, it's like conspiracy theories. Conspiracy. But look, there has to be some truth to some of them, right? They can't all be wrong, right? So there has to be something that went on, happened, some truth to it. I mean, they can't be that all conspiracy theories are 100% fake. I mean, there has to be some truth to them.
So we're at a point where the alleged, quote, conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah, it just seems like we're hitting...
The last 6
have been right.
So the bottom line is... How many more? They have always lied to you.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
And so if you say, well, they said it doesn't, it won't cause myocarditis. They lied to you, by the way.
No.
It doesn't cause it in that number. They lied to you.
Yeah.
It caused it in that number and even more. Once you understand it, you look at everything differently.
Yeah. Exactly. Thank you,
Frank. Thank
really
you for having me.
It.
I hope I don't sound too congested.
No, I think we together were the congested brothers here today. And
don't
you
make me cough.
What's that?
I say, don't make me cough.
Yeah, we haven't. I don't think we've coughed yet.
No, and I hope the mic hasn't picked up my snorting.
As soon as we turn off all these cameras,
hacking for 5 minutes.
We're going to be hacking for sure. Viva, thank you very much. Enjoy a safe trip back with your family to Florida, and don't come back till the summer.
If then, I think we are coming back for the summer, but definitely, I don't even want to ski. Even if I could get good conditions skiing, I don't think that wouldn't bring me back. So,
Happy New Year, happy 2024.
Thank you.
I hope the things you mentioned don't come true because something's going to happen.
One of them will.
One of them will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Episode 156 of the Drive-By Podcast is sponsored by Les Délices La Frenais. Maybe this is the year someone in your family, or maybe even you, are getting married. Then you need a custom cake designed by the professionals at Les Délices La Frenais. Now, I know you celebrated during the month of December. Christmas, the holidays came and went, and La Frenais was first on your list, of course, to get all those things that made your parties even better and sweeter. Well, that tradition continues in 2024. Check them out at their 5 Montreal locations. As you get ready to host people in the new year, you'll have get-togethers, you're going to someone's house, someone's party, some kind of event is happening, then La Frenais has it all for you. All the sweets, pastries, and everything you need, including custom cakes, and cakes available in their display units at any of the 5 stores you go to. Check them out around the Montreal area. The original hub in St. Leonard, Rosemere, Montreal West, Pointe-Claire, and my home location, Brossard on Taschereau. It's Les Délices Lafrenette. Simplement délicieux.
This is The Drive-By with Freeway Frank.
Watch all episodes of The Drive-By on YouTube. Listen in on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, Podbean, and TuneIn.